Thanks everyone for coming or watching the stream or watching the recording. My name is Zuz. I'm a dev role at Snapshot, and I wanted to give you like a quick presentation today about what is Snapshot, how does it work, how is it built, and what are the bounties for the DAO Global Hackathon. And if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. I'll just answer them ideally at the end, so you can have some time for a Q&A and answer anything that you might have questions about. So let me start with the keynote. I can move this. All right. What we'll talk about is, first of all, what is Snapshot? Then I'll talk a little bit about the technical architecture. We will look at all the bounties that we have and then jump into the questions. So starting with what is Snapshot? It is a voting platform that allows the communities, be it DAOs, NFT communities, basically all the different organizations, not even necessarily in Web3, to vote and do it without the gas fees. When it comes to some specificities, when it comes to Snapshot, first of all, it's free to use. So creating a space, so like an organization profile is free. Creating proposals or casting the votes is free for everyone after they connect their wallet. We are using signed messages to verify the users, which is done through our architecture through a service called Sequencer. We also have multiple voting systems. And by voting systems, what I mean here are things like single choice voting, weighted voting, ranked choice. So basically the setup that the voters have to choose from when they take part in a proposal. We also have the ability to use up to 8 different strategies for each space, which are determining the user's voting power. And this is actually one of the bounties, as there are certain core strategies that were created by the team, but this is a completely open source side of Snapshot, where anyone can actually create a new voting strategies that is using a different way of calculating users' voting power. The project itself is fully open source. You can find everything on GitHub on the Snapshot Labs repository. I will show you some of the repos today. And anyone is free to contribute, to look into the code base and verify how we proceed with the voting process. Moreover, we also allow the spaces to have their custom branding through custom domains and custom skins. So basically, they can adjust the Snapshot platform to the style of their own organization. And lastly, we also have proposal and voting validation, which enables the spaces to define certain requirements for users to either create a proposal or to take part in the vote. And then how does it work? Before we go into the technical architecture, we can look at the 3 main elements of the entire voting process. And it all starts with the spaces. Spaces are kind of like an organization accounts profiles on the platform, where each space can define their details like name, description, category, and then also define how the voting process should look like for that specific space. And what I mean here is, for example, defining the voting strategies. So, for example, checking the balance of an ERC20 token, checking the NFTs that user owns, or, for example, on-chain activity of the user. I can actually show you a couple more interesting details of strategies that are quite unique when it comes to what they're doing behind the scenes. Space can also define the validation strategies, so proposals, voting, define whether the voting should be delayed from the proposal creation to when the proposal starts. Space team, space moderators can also define the different roles within a space. So we can have a space admin who can change the settings, create proposal, manage the space, moderators who have the access to actually managing the proposals. And for example, if they find a scam proposal, they can archive it. They can also create proposals themselves. And also we have authors who are the users that are kind of passing through the proposal validation every time. And if they are the authors for a space, they can always create a new one. In spaces, the team can also set up the different plugins, which are extensions of the regular Snapshot functionalities. This is also one of the bounties, which I will explain to you later. Then we have proposals. So once the space has been created, the eligible users, so either anyone or the authors or the users who pass the validation, can create a new proposal. And when doing that, they can define the title, describe the topic of the proposal, and then also choose the voting system. So one of the systems I described before, like single choice or weighted voting, for example. And lastly, the third element of the voting process, the most important one, are the votes. And users who are connected with the wallet to our platform and are eligible and have also voting power at the time of proposal creation can take part in the voting. And I think this is also a good moment to mention where basically Snapshot name comes from. Snapshot is referring to the block, basically the moment, the timestamp at when the proposal was created. And this is one of the most fundamental characteristics of our platform, because we want to make sure that users already have the ability to vote, so the voting power, before someone created the proposal, to avoid some uncontrolled access. Maybe not uncontrolled, but to make sure that users are not manipulating the proposals once they've already been created. So whenever you think about Snapshot, always remember that it's all about making sure that we always look at the snapshot of proposal creation. Then, how does it work when it comes to the technical architecture? We've recently released an article on Mirror that I can share later on in our channel on Discord, on the Hackathon Discord, but we can go through it right now. So the main action from the user perspective is happening on our UI, which you can find at snapshot.org. And what is happening whenever user is changing the space settings, creating a proposal or casting a vote, is that through our SDK, which is called Snapshot.js, which is something that you can also use for the bounties, that action with the message signature is then sent to the backend, which you can see in the middle of the graph, and is then verified through Snapshot sequencer, which is basically orchestrating all different actions that are happening behind the scenes. And one of the actions that sequencer is taking care of is validating, checking the user's eligibility to either vote or create a proposal, and to calculate their voting power through the Score API server. This is where we look at the voting strategies or the validation strategies, look at the user's wallet, the user's address, and see what will be the outcome of the Score API decision here. What is important is that Score API can read directly from the nodes, from subgraphs. It can use external APIs that will be then used in the voting strategies to check the user's voting power. What is happening after the validation, and if, for example, the vote of the user was successful, then sequencer will make sure that the data is stored on IPFS, and it will be pinned on IPFS through a service called Pineapple, which is basically racing the request through different providers to make sure that the data is pinned as fast as possible on IPFS What we also do, we start on a MySQL database, which is then actually also exposing the data on Hub API, which is available for anyone to access and also use in their integrations in their own products. And lastly, what happens if the entire process was successful? The response is displayed in the UI, and UI is actually querying the Hub API and the data that was stored on the MySQL and on IPFS. When it comes to Snapshot itself, maybe I can just go directly here. Let me have a look. Sorry, my browser. There we go. This is how the interface looks like if you haven't been here yet. So basically, we're currently on the front page, on homepage of snapshot.org. And what you can see is a list of all the different spaces which you can search for. You can also filter them by categories. And what we can do, we can, for example, go down to Decentraland. And what you can see on the spaces page is a list of all the proposals, the active ones, the closed ones. And on the left side, what you can see is that you can join the space. So basically, you will become one of the members and you will receive notifications about the new proposals within the space. You can create a new proposal, delegate your voting power. And what might be interesting for you is the settings page, where basically the space controllers and admins can change the entire setup that I mentioned before. So what you can see here are basic details about the space. In the strategies tab, spaces can add up to 8 voting strategies, and the voting power is cumulative. And as you can see here, we have some basic ones like ERC20 balance off, ERC721. But then actually Decentraland created some custom voting strategies, which are, for example, querying the estate size that the user owns in Decentralized, and they are basing the voting power on that specific calculation. What you can do is to click on this play button in the top right corner, which will take you to the playground. And within the playground, what you can do is to basically test how the strategy works, define a specific snapshot to query the user's voting power at that specific moment, and then test it with different addresses to see what is the result for the listed addresses. And as you can see, for all of them here, it's actually 0. But this is a great page to experiment with the existing voting strategies to test your own voting strategies if you'll be creating some. If we will now go back to Decentraland, what we have else is the proposal validation, where here you can define the validation, say that only authors are allowed to submit a proposal. In the voting page, this is everything related to voting. So how long should it last in the voting period? What should be the delay? What is the quorum required for a proposal to pass? What will be the validation for the voting? So anyone can vote in this case. In the members tab, what you can see is that the space can add the admins, moderators, and authors by pasting the address in this field directly. And then in advanced settings, what they can do is to add new plugins, define the treasury address, or for example, link other spaces to the main space or join a subspace to the main space so that then they will be displayed in their profile page directly. The spaces can also set up the custom domains, as you can see here, for example, for decentralized is governance.decentralized.org, and they can choose a default skin. So as I told you before, the custom branding, and then classic danger zone, change the controller, delete the space if you want to clean it all up. Okay, so coming back to the presentation, If you have any questions about the architecture, we can jump into it later with the questions. Bounties. So why are we all here? We defined 4 different bounties. First one being to create a non-financial voting strategy. Second, a plugin for a better voting experience for the users. MetaMask Snap, voting through the wallet. And lastly, a Dune data dashboard. So starting with the non-financial voting strategy, which is a bounty for 500 euros, what we want to achieve here is to create a voting strategy which enables basically non-financial governance, which means that the voting power shouldn't be calculated directly on the amount of the token that the users hold, but something else which is not strictly financial. And I don't want to give too many ideas here. We count on the creativity, but you can think about different badges that were received upon attending events or a specific user activity, contributions on GitHub. If you think, I don't know, about developer DAO, that would be something great to see there. Participation in Discord or discourse discussions. And truth is that possibilities are endless. You can even think about the time of how long has a user held the tokens of a specific organization. Like, regardless of how much it is, what you look at is how long they've been in the DAO rather than how much did they invest. And it's up to the team to come up with the idea regarding the strategy. And when it comes to the resources, what I provided here and what you should also see on the bounty description on the platform is a link to our documentation, which tells you what the voting strategies are. And here is the link to the docs that tell you how to create a new voting strategy. And basically, if you follow all the steps, so forking the snapshot strategies repo on GitHub, duplicating one of the existing strategies, you will be then able to edit the files that you have in there. So index.ts, which should hold the main logic for the strategy, which you can see basically here, providing a schema JSON, which defines the structure of the strategy, and then also providing the examples file where you can paste specific addresses that should be working with the strategy. And afterwards, you can actually test it together all in the playground to actually see if you're receiving the correct voting power that you're expecting. What is important is that we have defined a series of tests that you have to pass in order for the strategy to be considered, and you can run it locally with the npm run test. You can also have a look at the test files that I'll show you in a second to see what are we exactly looking for. Check the checklist that we defined on the GitHub repo, and you can create a pull request directly on the origin repository, not with your fork, which then a team will review once the deadline for the submission has passed. And I'll take you now here to the repository. So as you can see, it's Snapshot Labs/Snapshot Strategies repo. And if you scroll down, you can see the README with explaining you how to run the package, how you can test your new strategy as well, and importantly, to be able to go through the checklists with the general overview, the details about the code. So, for example, the strategy should not send a request for all the voters because it doesn't really scale. And the fact that, for example, the voting power of one address doesn't depend on the other address. And other important thing, the strategy should take less than 10 seconds to resolve, because remember, this is the moment when user is casting their vote, and we don't really want them to wait too long to see the result and see if they're eligible to vote and also how big is their voting power. If you want to explore the repo, you can go into the tests, first of all, to see what we're checking for in the strategy.tests, where you will see the descriptions for all the different edge cases that we're looking for. And then if you go into SRC, you can see the strategies, which are all the voting strategies. Validations are the validation strategies for proposal creation and voting, which are not the case for this specific bounty. But then if you head into strategies, you have access to all the over 400 different strategies that we currently have on Snapshot. And if we'll go down, for example, to decentralized that I showed you before, what we have here is the estate size. You can see that they have the strategy to calculate the total amount of decentralized lands in estates. And the logic for that is defined in the index file. So you can dig into the code and see how they did it. You can use external APIs. I think, there you go. Here they're using their the graph subgraph. And you can also fetch the information from other sources to be able to calculate the voting power. All right, so that was the first bounty. If you have some questions, you can post them now in the chat. We can go through them later on. Second, create a plugin that will enhance users' voting experience. This is actually our biggest bounty for 2,000 euros. And what we noticed is that basically there's so much we can do to actually make the voting process much easier for the users, because truth is they don't have the time, they don't have the knowledge, they are not always super involved in the DAOs, and they don't really always know what they should vote for. So starting with the time, they are not having the time to participate in the discourse discussions or Discord discussions, which are preceding the proposal creation. Afterwards, when the proposal is created, they don't even really have the time to read it and take a vote. They also might not be really aware of the potential consequences of their votes, and it might be really difficult to find out what the most active members think about the upcoming proposal, what is their approach, and it's really difficult to dig into those discussions and figure out what is the general opinion coming from the community. So what we would love to see here is an innovative solution that will help users make informed decisions, but without the need to spend a lot of time on their own research. And we would recommend that you use AI to support this project, to support a plugin. It's not a requirement, but I think it can add a lot of value for the users, depending on how you decide to implement it. And again, I wouldn't like to give too many ideas here, because I think there is so much to be done, and also current AI development is providing so many cool different possibilities. So I don't want to influence your ideas here. And there's a lot that can be done. And in this case, what will happen is that you'll be able to create a new plugin. Let me jump in here. This is our docs for the plugin specifically, and this documentation focuses on the proposal page. So basically, what will happen is that you'll be able to create one of kind of like elements on the proposal page looking like a widget, which will add extra functionality to the proposal page. So starting again from forking repository, here you'll be forking the main snapshot repo where we hold all the tokens. And these docs are guiding you through how to create a new folder, how to structure it. So basically, you have a command ready here to create a new folder with your plugin name and the basic setup when it comes to the config. So the name of the plugin, author, version, description, and so on. And then what you will notice is that you can create different elements which will be added to the snapshot interface. So a proposal component, which will be displayed below the proposal content. There's a proposal sidebar, so it will be also displayed on the side. And you can also affect the proposal creation by creating the create component, which will be added to the form when someone is writing a new proposal. Below, what you can see is how you can structure the component, what are the different properties that are passed to that specific component, including the proposal, the space of the proposal, the ID of it, the results, and so on and so forth. You can, of course, use the existing components and composables that are already in our repository, or you can create new ones within your folder. And what wouldn't happen when a space will be setting up a component, a plugin in their settings, they'll be able to provide a specific setup, which is optional if you wish to set it up this way. And it will be required in the form of a JSON file in the most basic way. A quick word on localization. We are not using the hard-coded text, but rather the local languages. So basically, what you do is to use the T function, as you can see here. And what you need to do is to just add the text that should be displayed in the default JSON. Once the pull request will be merged, it will be translated to all the other different localizations. And then create a pull request on the original repository. Make sure to link it in your bounty, and it will be then reviewed by our team. If you like to have a look at the existing plugins, you can see them here. So you have, for example, POAP, SafeSnap, which is the execution plugin, HAL notifications, and more. If we'll click on Learn More, it will take us to the repository. So here you can see we are in Snapshot source plugins, and in this case, we are going to POAP. And what you can see is that they are using the proposal sidebar. So it will show on the right side of the proposal. And the logic is defined in the index.ts file. And moreover, what POAP did is that in components, they added their own custom block where you can define the styling, where you can define the custom display of that specific plugin on the website. All right, going back, let's go to the next one, MetaMask and the function to enable voting through the MetaMask wallet. Second biggest bounty, 1,500 euros. What we want you to do is to create a MetaMask snap, so kind of like their plugin extension that enables wallet users to cast votes on Snapshot. And MetaMask the snap should provide an easy and seamless way to cast a vote on Snapshot proposals with too many complicated user journeys. It should be compatible with different blockchain networks, which is also the case on Snapshots, as we are working with many different networks depending on the space. And lastly, it should also ensure the security of user funds and make sure that their privacy is maintained. And the really cool thing about this project is that it will not only benefit the Snapshot and MetaMask, but it will also advance the growth of the decentralized governance systems in general, as we want to make sure that the governance is accessible from all the different spaces, be it Snapshot, be it Wallet, be it other platforms, and that users don't have to think too much or spend too much time on the process itself, and they can rest sure that basically the entire process is safe for them individually. When it comes to the resources, I listed the links here to the MetaMask snaps, which you can have a look at yourself. You have the Get Started and the developer docs, where you can go through basically the entire setup of the snap. From our side, you can definitely have a look at the Snapshot.js, so the main library that we're using, documentation, and also the GraphQL API. So this is the hub API that I mentioned before. Here in Snapshot.js, what you can have a look at is basically the entire setup, development, but then how to implement certain actions. And for this case, the most interesting ones are definitely casting a vote. So here you can see a simple script on how you can use Snapshot.js to do that. Creating a proposal, out of scope for this bounty, but if you want to experiment, you can definitely do so. And then what we also have is the GraphQL API to, for example, fetch information about a specific proposal and display it in the MetaMask wallet. You can find different queries examples that you can send to the GraphQL API, querying status, proposals, votes, single votes, and you can play around with it yourself on hub snapshot.org/GraphQL, where you have the GraphQL interface and the example queries on the left side as well. Okay, and then we have the last bounty, 1,000 euros, which is the Dune data dashboard. So the challenge would be to create a new data dashboard on Dune, specifically based on the snapshot data, which actually has been updated today if you haven't seen it yet. And as for the dashboard, we are completely open to any topic you would like to work on. But there are certain areas that may be really interesting. Just to give you some directions, you can look at the voting patterns and trends in specific DAOs, a specific category of DAOs, the biggest DAOs, the social DAOs. You can examine the performance of specific protocols over time to look at the historical data. Evaluating the effectiveness of specific voting and validation strategies, or for example, looking at the impact of whales on the voting process. It's completely up to you. You can have a look at our existing dashboard on Dune, which you can see here, where we provide the totals, in this case, the total proposal numbers, authors. As you can see here, we have almost 13 million votes since the creation of Snapshot, almost 2 million unique voters. And what you can do on Dune is to easily display different visualizations based on your SQL queries. As you can see, we have the numbers in total as a count visualization. We have tables, we have charts, which are based on your code directly. So as for our dashboard, it's pretty straightforward. It provides more general information, but there's a lot that you can look into, and there are already many dashboards being created by just people in the space. So make sure to have a look at it. In the bounty description, you should also be able to find the links to the Dune documentation. However, it's pretty straightforward. You can log into the platform, go to My Creations, and then what you can do is to create a new dashboard and create queries. So basically on the dashboard, what you'll be able to do, let me do that right now. What you can do is to add the results of the queries or add text widgets. So if I'll add visualizations, as you can see, I don't have any queries right now. I could use some queries from other users. So what I can do is to now say add a new query. And what I will do is just to take this one, which is counting all the totals. So we are using the votes table. So as you can see, to retrieve the snapshot data, what you need to do is to use snapshot.votes. To get all the proposals, we use the proposals table. And to count all the spaces, we can say snapshot.spaces to get all the results. And if I click run, what you'll see below is are the results from my query. And what I can do right now is to save it. It will be snapshot totals, save it. And now I will go back to the dashboards, head in, I can edit the dashboard, add a visualization, and add the query results that I had before. And as you can see, they are displayed as a table. But in order to display it, for example, as a count, if I will go again to the query, what I can do is to click on new visualization, say that I want to pick a counter. I will add it now. And as you can see here, what I'm using is the column votes to display all the votes in the visual. We can, for example, change to voters. And what we will do right now, let's go to the dashboard, edit, add a visualization. And now I have the counter, which I can add wherever I want on the dashboard. I can also provide the text widgets, which are accepting some markdown. So feel free to play around with this, look into different areas of the governance on Snapshot, and provide also a data analysis if you feel comfortable with that. Because what we will also really appreciate when looking at the submissions is also the understanding of the data and being able to draw some conclusions from the analysis you did. And that's it from my side. Let me know if you have any questions. I can see there is something in the chat. Maybe I'll stop sharing the screen. Oh, so I can have a look at the Zoom meeting. Can I share the slides once done? Sure, I can send them in the Discord channel or send it to the Aragon team so they can also share it somewhere on the platform directly. Do you have any questions about any of the bounties or anything about Snapshot? Okay.
I saw that Snapshot is using Vue.
Yes.
The JS framework.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So if there are no more questions, I guess you can reach out to me on Discord, either in a DM or on the Snapshot channel. And I'll also provide the slides. And I guess that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for taking. Yeah, thank you for taking the time. This has been really interesting, and you know, I'm definitely interested to see what people come up with for the governance strategy. I think that's going to be really fun to see.
Yeah. That there's a lot of fun things you can do in there.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Well, Luz, thank you, and everyone, enjoy the rest of your day.
Enjoy. Thank you so much for coming.